Oh, hello there. Yes, well, we're trundling through that Easter weekend, aren't we? Where we all don't do anything religious, realistically, because the actual percentage of practicing Christians in this country is very small. However, it does give people in the media a good opportunity to bang on a certain culture drum, which they love to do. And I'm just going to give you some choice examples of this today. A whole bunch of people who aren't religious will decry the fact that we're not religious, which is a very odd stance to take as far as I'm concerned. I mean, speaking personally, I find the adherence to a Christian festival calendar to be a major pain in the posterior because it dictates the school year. For some reason, schools always have 2 weeks off at Easter. Actually, it's basically to do with Lent. But the actual number of pupils that are going to be giving things up is tiny, and yet there it is, slap bang, we have to have 2 weeks off, which means we can't reorganise the rest of the year. It's pretty much the same with the 2 weeks off at Christmas. It's just a weird old hangover from 100 years ago when a larger percentage of people actually were Christian. It's a bit meaningless now, and we could kind of move on. But it does give people in the media a chance to roll out a kind of quasi let's be racist whilst pretending that we're not. And you can also use Christianity as a kind of hook for other social ills as well, a bit like a sort of Victorian philanthropist who will pay starvation wages whilst at the same time insisting that his workers spend time in the library reading the Bible. Anyway, yeah, this weekend we had Kevin from Talk TV, who was insisting he wasn't a Christian and yet was vaguely upset about the idea that there are Muslim people in this country. He's not a Christian. Well, then fine, mate. Don't complain about people that are religious. I don't have a problem with people that are religious, as long as they don't, shove it down my throat, as they say. But of course, Kevin doesn't want other religions shoved down his throat because they're a bit threatening for him. And it's the same with Ben, who was again very insistent, I'm not religious. Okay, fine, don't bang on about it then, mate. But yes, came up with the idea that if people were more religious, there'd be less crime. And the sociologist in me doesn't necessarily think that that's particularly the case. They interviewed, links down below, they interviewed an anti-knife campaigner. I don't know, do you get pro-knife campaigners? And the idea, this guy was coming out with the idea, we need more punishments. Well, there are loads of punishments, particularly loads in the Bible. Actually, if you look at the Bible, there's quite a lot of instances of people stabbing in there. So I'm not quite sure if you're going to want kids to be reading it. But this stuff comes onto a wider notion of the media and just not knowing anything. I mean, you get Fraser Nelson in the Telegraph, who's again banging on about Christianity and crime. Okay, yeah, but Emil Durkheim was writing about this. 30 years ago? The godfather of sociology linked being part of a religious grouping to feeling less alienated from society. That's just a generic thing. If we want to feel less alienated in society, maybe we should have more cohesive society where people felt more able to take part, rather than, say, a media that just wanted to separate them into tiny little groups depending on which particular group of people they belong to in terms of religion. Say you can have the Catholics in one corner, the Protestants in another, the Muslims in another, the Jewish people in another, and presumably, I don't know, the Hindus will have to cling to the ceiling or something. Yes, but so long as we're divided up into little groups, why not have a more inclusive society? Maybe having a society where instead of insisting that people should become more religious, that people should be less religious and think less about those things that divide us. That's just me being sort of, I don't know, vaguely spiritual, I suppose, about things. If you're worried about crime in society, it isn't because people realistically aren't going to church. That might help, but it's not really an answer. Crime is very closely linked to poverty. Again, you've probably got over 100 years of sociological thought on this with quite a lot of statistics. There's a reasonable rise in the amount of knife crimes, it's true, but it's not particularly confined to London. It's not particularly confined to just Sadiq Khan's fault. It's all over the place because we have rising poverty levels, that sense of being alienated from society, that classic anomie, if you like, which I've actually heard a few people using this weekend stunningly, but I think without really quite getting their heads around what it means. If you want people to feel less alienated and more together in society, how about having a society where the gulf between the rich and poor isn't an absolute chasm? And I don't really want to hear people lecturing me about how much more godly I need to be. Again, if you look at the piece with Ben from GB News, I mean, he brings out his own morality. He's not based on a book from 2,000 years ago. You don't need that level of morality. Okay? We are innately human, and we can get on if we're allowed to. That might be a better idea. Anyway, rambling thoughts over. Do have a lovely rest of the weekend. Make the best use of the weather before it, closes in again. And enjoy the time off. You've earned it.